Hello
And welcome
to
another episode
of the Carmudgeon
show. My name
is Derek Tam,
Scott, and my name is...
Jason Cammisa.
Oh, it's late in the day and we need to go home.
No, we're just about to get started on this episode of the Carmudgeon Show, in which we discuss tires. We get a tire update and also a random number generator, car reviews, look into the spreadsheets, which both Jason and I keep to track the cars that we have driven. Now I clap.
Yeah, we're done.
Poorly.
It's on brand. These are not
confusing.
Jack stands. They're John stands. John, but John, not Jawn, which is a Phillyism. John. You know what a John is? John is a thing, like a doohickey or a higgy jigger. Or get that John over there.
It occurred to me that JFK and his wife have the same name, kind of. Jack and Jackie.
On this episode of the Carmudgeon Show, we discussed the name
recording?
John. Yeah, it is. It has been
geez.
for quite some time. John, Jawn, is a different thing than John or Jon or indeed Jack. But these are Jack stands for our Carmudgeon logo, which you can't see because there is a Viper chair in the way.
Made in America.
Yes.
Based in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Hopefully avoiding tariffs, but made out of only real materials, i.e. not plasticky crap. These are, according to the Viper people, these are used by real people like Jay Leno. I should ask Jay Leno. Excuse me, sir, do you use Viper chairs? And Honda?
Yeah, Honda's on the list.
Honda's on the list?
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to such things. However, from April 11th through June 22nd, Viper Chairs is giving away a 2021 Python Green Porsche GT4.
Well, they're not giving it away from April 11th to June 22nd. They are accepting entries.
Okay, so every $5 you spend at viperindustrial.com, you will be entered for a chance to win the GT4 plus $15,000 in cash to pay for
Before
repairs.
taxes.
Yeah, for
Tires.
Tires. The full rules and details are at viperindustrial.com. That's a Viper with a Y. V-Y-P-P-R-E-R.
Gesundheit?
Viper, V-Y-P-E-R industrial.com.
Did we mention the Porsche was green?
I said it was Python Green.
Python green.
Not Viper Green.
Wrong snake.
I know you have
wrong
a problem
shark.
with this. Yeah, wrong shark. Python is a shark?
No.
Anyway, more importantly, Viper Chairs is the sponsor of this episode. And if you use the coupon code Carmudgeon on Viper.
Good luck spelling that. It's on the website.
Okay, no. See, it's Carmudgeon with a car because it's not Carmudgeon, it's Carmudgeon. Do you not know Carmudgeon? You will get $50 off. $50 is a lot, especially considering you guys are absorbing this podcast for free. So just benefits all around. Would you mind taking the chair down? I will erect the John stands. I just hope you fall a little bit. It is a heavy chair.
It is substantial.
Derek broke the unbreakable chair.
No, it just needs
Someone with more muscles? You should spend more time in the gym, young man.
Okay, well, I shall leave shortly to go do that.
You should spend more time in the James. Because
Formal gym
is short for James in the way that Jack stands is short for John stands.
Okay, so that's a formal gym, formal attire only.
Yes. So I have an update. I learned something.
Uh-oh, don't hurt yourself.
I know. If you were trying to have traction, and if you were trying to get your tires to tract upon the ground,
this is going to be deep.
Helpful to have said tires touch the ground.
Okay. Well,
my Jynah got high-sided.
High-centered.
I don't know.
Unless, high side is when you crash a motorcycle and you fly off the high side.
Maybe I did. How do you know?
I don't know. What you do with your Jynah is entirely between you and your God.
So as you guys might remember, we did a Land Cruiser episode of Icons, and Jake actually drove the Jynah all the way to Utah in the middle of winter, and Vredestein Tires gave us a set of Wintrac Pros, and I had yet to experience those Wintrac. He did. Jake got to, but I never experienced the Wintrac Pros in snow. So I went to Tahoe in the winter, and the day before The Airbnb was set to be available to us. Tahoe got 4 feet of snow, according to all the news.
But
News is not accurate these days, apparently, according to some politicians might be right. There was not a fucking snowflake. Nothing. There was literally not a flake of snow to be found anywhere around Lake Tahoe. I mean, there were like, that's not entirely true. I did park it on a 12-inch wide by 6-inch wide by 2-inch high pile of snow that was in the yard of the Airbnb and make a funny photo of it. But anyway, so I got up one morning and I'm like, I'm going to find snow. So I drove up to Mount Rose, which is like 9,300 feet of elevation. And I found a parking lot that had snow. It was fully snow covered. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go get the van stuck in the snow. Guess what I did?
You got the van stuck in the snow.
No, I drove right up and there was perfect amounts of grip. It was no problem at all. I could tell that the snow was on dirt, so I didn't spin tire too much and I took it easy and I took a beautiful picture in the snow and there was an actual, I couldn't even pay anyone to do this, a skier that came through and skied right past my van Jynah. It was amazing. And I'm like, we got a slow-mo picture of a video, which I'll insert probably, Jake. Jake, if you could insert that right now while I'm talking, of the tire spinning and the snow getting flung everywhere. And it was just wonderful. So my friends all piled back into the car after the dog was one of their dogs was out playing in the snow. And we go to back out and we're like maybe 6 feet from the road, which is completely dry and there's no snow anywhere else. And I stop to wait for traffic to clear, and I pull my foot off the brake, and the front of the van Jynah goes right into probably a ditch that I couldn't see because everything was snow covered, and was stuck.
Hooray! High-centered.
High-sided, or whatever you choose to call my van Jynah. Yeah, and for the first time in my life, I had to call AAA.
First time in your life?
Well, first time in my life that I was so stuck that I couldn't get out. And it was so comprehensively stuck that and it was instant. It was just pull your foot off the brake and so high-centered that we couldn't rock it, nothing. Couldn't move it at all. 4 of us, 5 of us, however many, there were a bunch of us. Muscly guys too, like actual strong, young, strapping men. And so it took 2 seconds for AAA to drag it out. I mean, it was so embarrassing. It was very terrible. So unfortunately, I was unable to fully test the...
So you need 33s.
So, okay, there's a YouTube channel called Tire Reviews. There's this guy with a weird accent, and he's thin, and he needs to eat a bagel because he's skinny. But he tests all kinds of tires and talks funny. And he wrote that comment basically on my Instagram.
You need 33s.
You need 33s on this. You need bigger tires. But I bring him up for good reason, because on the way home, there was actually a massive storm incoming that was going to dump a couple feet on Tahoe, and I would have happily stayed, but work and Airbnbs and stuff like that. So we go to leave, and we get to the base of whatever road gets you up to Donner Pass or whatever, and it's closed, and it's chain control. And California has, I think it's just California. I don't know what states. California has a chain control thing, and I watch them wave every single fucking car through because everyone's in an SUV, including a Tesla Model Y Performance that was in front of us. And they're like, you there. So I had to pull over in the van with 4 brand new dedicated winter tires on this car and apply chains to the front of the car, which I had never done before. And luckily...
it's quite pleasant, isn't it?
It wasn't, no.
Yeah, it's awful. It's miserable.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It was maybe...
That's because that car has ground clearance and sidewalls.
The problem is you have to sort of... These chains are sort of open at the bottom and you wrap them around the contact patch, and then you wrap around the top and you have to clip them. And where you clip them is the fucking strut. It's directly at the 12 o'clock position. And there was no room, and it was cold, but everything was wet. And I was like, I didn't have snow pants with me. I was just not having any time of this. And I was so goddamn irritated that everyone's going, and I know all these fucking cars are on all-season tires, and I have dedicated snows, and I was getting more and more angry by the second. Mm-hmm. But I didn't yell at anyone. I just applied the chains, and they waved me through, and now it's just a terrible sound. It's ting, 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 ting. And I think they're called ladder type. They're not actual chains, but they're like steel ropes or whatever. And so they're rated to 30 miles an hour. The roadway says speed limit is 25. There's not any snow on the ground whatsoever. It's merely wet and barely wet at that. So I set the cruise control at 29 miles an hour. And for the next, 200 years, I am holding up 74 billion cars. Every car ever produced in the history of the world was all simultaneously stuck behind me. No one in front of me for miles, but I'm not.
This is why everyone says, I need a four-wheel drive. It's not because they actually need four-wheel drive. It's because they don't want to stop at chain control. Yes.
I don't even know how long it was. It felt like 45 minutes because I was so embarrassed, but probably it was over in, maybe 7 minutes. I couldn't do it anymore. And I pulled over and I radioed to my friends. One of them was in a VinFast and the other was in a Range Rover with the one that broke down with need AAA plates on it. And he didn't, neither of them have winter tires on their car and neither of them got stopped, but they did wait for me.
And he didn't need AAA, but you did.
Why do you have to be like that?
Just pointing out facts.
Damn it. Yes. That too. And so they waited for me while I took the chains off, which got tangled on the back of the thing. And we were in a fucking creek running down the street. It was very upsetting. Very annoying. And I was on a bit of a rant and my friends were making fun of me because I'm like, this is like a fucking TSA level farce. Like, what the fuck is my toothpaste going to do? Blow up a fucking plane? I just was like, this is like those schmucks at the fucking airport who are like, you can't have more than 2 ounces of fucking whatever.
3.4.
Whatever the fuck it is. It's actually not even a law anymore. But basically the whole TSA thing, I'm sorry, it's not a farce. I want to not die in a plane explosion, but also the way they go about this is more theater than anything else. And I feel like this chain control is the same way. And I was in very much a mood to make this very clear to my friends. So we get in the van and I'm like, fuck it, we're doing 50 and there's another chain control ahead and Waze, because Waze is amazing, routes us around the other chain control thing to get on at a different spot. I'm like, I will beat these motherfuckers. By the way, the van has about 7 horsepower at 1 million feet of elevation. So we're climbing this hill, and now all of a sudden it starts to get snowy. And I start thinking, hope I don't actually need to put the chains on this side road. And we get to the almost top of the hill, and we merge back onto the freeway, and there's no cops there or anyone requiring chains. And I know chain control is active. So I'm like, well, I'll just say I didn't know, right, if I get pulled over or something. We get on the highway, and it's a little bit of like a dusting of snow. And this is probably the first time any of these cars have encountered any snow because it wasn't actually snowing yet. And then we come to a screeching halt. I have no problems keeping up with traffic. Like everyone comes to a stop because the fucking Tesla Model Y Performance decided to throw itself into a Jersey barrier and totaled itself. And of course, I'm like, that is the farce. He is on fucking all seasons. And then I looked in performance and realized he's on summer tires and they let him through. They let the guy on summer performance tires through because he's got 4-wheel drive and not my van Jynah on winters.
Mm-hmm. And if we learned anything from consuming the content of Engineering Explained, it's that tires matter more than anything else.
There's only one thing touching the ground, technically 4 of them, but they're all the same thing. It's your tires. Mm-hmm. Nothing else matters. And by the way, if you can't stop or turn...
Nothing else matters. It's that your ability to accelerate is... Like if you put a rear-wheel drive car and a front-wheel drive car and a four-wheel drive car all on the same tire, they will have different capabilities.
Part of the fine, but in your ability to have traction at whatever axle is there, the only thing that touches, my point is, the only thing that's touching the ground is the tire. And if your tire doesn't have a grip, it doesn't matter whether you have 74
drive is
wheel
immaterial.
drive.
Yes, four-wheel drive is immaterial if you don't have tires that can adhere to the surface.
Exactly. And I had actually planned on racing the VinFast versus the van Jynah twice. Once on dry pavement to show that the VinFast was an order of magnitude quicker, especially at elevation, which it most certainly was. And we did that race and it just left me for dead. And then I planned on doing the race again when we were on snow to show that the van's additional traction, thanks to the winter tires, vastly more than made up for the power difference. Unfortunately, we never got to drive on snow, so it didn't happen. So I'm like on this fucking tear about like, why would they let these cars through that can make it up the hill, but then are crashing on the way down, and realize every car in a ditch, it probably had all season tires on it, whatever. So I get home and I turn on my YouTube, and I watch Tire Reviews does a video, and I'm going to show you this thing. And then we're going to use an insert for these people. So this gentleman has done a scientific test at, I think he was at Michelin Proving Ground, where he's demonstrating actual braking distances from 20 down to 5 miles an hour on the same car. I think it was a Honda Civic in this test. And the all-season tires, I think that came on the car, I don't remember what they were, stopped.
Where's the summer tires?
The summer tires wouldn't have made it out of the garage. And let's be very clear on this. Required 74 feet to stop from 20 down to 5 miles an hour, and the winter tires required 34. So less than half the stopping distance between all seasons and winters. And then somewhere in the middle are the wide cable ties, metal ladders, which is what I had on it, snow chains, snow socks, and winter.
Snow socks, impressively good.
In snow, but actually didn't do a goddamn thing in ice. So I recommend the video. Maybe I'll try to put the link in the description if we can remember to do that. And it was the same situation with traction and accelerating. The all seasons required 8 seconds to get from 5 to 10 miles an hour, whereas the winter tires were 3.3, and nothing else was close. But I think the most interesting thing here, stopping I think is more important than going, right? Because it's a safety thing. But if you look at this, the cable ties and the snow chains and all of the other solutions that you can put onto an all-season tire, and all of these other things were on the all-seasons, the winter tires were by themselves, don't even come close to the stopping distance of winter tires. Mm-hmm. Not even remotely close. A 16-foot braking distance, you're 12. I can do math. I'm smart.
Just not right now.
Or usually. Is a huge difference. Yeah. And that's an enormous 12 on 34 feet.
Yeah, it's a third more.
Right. And you know, when you're talking about the difference between 74 feet and 35 feet, I did an episode of the show that was eventually known as Know It All, started out as called Proper Care and Feeding. And one of the episodes I did was winter tires versus summer tires in terms of braking distances. I'll try to find it and maybe use an insert. But if I remember correctly, it was something like from a 70 mile an hour stop, if you put a tree right where the car and winter tires came to a complete stop and just
how fast would you be going?
How fast would you going when you hit the tree with summer tires? And it was a fatal accident. It was just fatal. There's no one surviving that. It was like 50 something, whatever it was. It's a couple years ago.
Here's an example using actual real world tests. Two identical cars traveling down a snow-covered highway at 60 miles an hour. They're both wearing Michelin tires, best tires in the world, IMHO. One of them has all-season tires and the other one has dedicated winter tires. All of a sudden, a reindeer jumps out in front of them, and the car with winter tires stops just before it clips off Rudolph at the ankles. The all-season tire car slams into Rudolph at 25 miles an hour. A 25 mile an hour impact is enough to kill you. I get it, you need to whack somebody. But your normal guy went, upstate for a couple of months. No problem. All you gotta do is buy him a nice, cheap set of all-season tires. Send them to Chicago in January. Next thing you know, splat! Closed casket. Nobody suspected me.
This incensed me that those boobs in their all-season four-wheel drive cars were allowed to proceed, and I had to stop. And so the next time I go to Tahoe in my van Jynah, I'm putting four-wheel drive badges all over that fucking thing and giving the finger to the gentlemen who were trying to stop me and just driving right through, because I don't need fast forward to the next episode of the Carmudgeon show where I'm like, I got stuck on the way up to Tahoe and I got rear-ended by a F-150 that was on summer tires because he could make it up and I couldn't, whatever. You get the point. Mm-hmm. I was very angry. Mm-hmm. More importantly,
this is what happens when you leave your house. This is a Carmudgeon lesson number 1, right? Carmudgeons don't go anywhere. Carmudgeons certainly don't go anywhere. But
they walk out the front door and say, "Get off my lawn."
That's right.
That is my pathetic tire update. Is Vredestein Wintracs aren't good in the snow when they're not touching the snow. No offense to Vredestein. They're hate to say it, but if the tire doesn't contact the snow in the first place, it can't grip. So don't high center your angina. Okay. The practical advice. Your doctor would tell you the same thing. And also don't believe the news when they say Tahoe got 4 feet of snow, because what they mean is the ski resorts that are thousands of feet higher elevation got 4 feet of snow, and Lake Tahoe got drizzle.
Splendid.
Bastard.
The service wagon has Vredesteins, but they're not snow rated. They are
We still need to do a Vredestein tire update because if those of you guys remember, Vredestein sent us a whole shit ton of tires. But I have not fully experienced all of the tires yet. I still have the Summers for my e-Golf, which are All-Track Pros. Have not driven so much as a mile yet because I'm still on my quote-unquote winter tires, which are Quattracs. Those same things as those, right? Mm-hmm. You have Quattracs. I will say at this point, remain completely blown away by every one of the Vredestein tires that I have. The Rover is transformed by the Spring Classics, and the Quattracs are great overall tires.
I have a rally coming soon. I will have a lot more commentary. Large barge rally coming with a Quattracs on my R129. So.
Oh, you have Quattracs or regular Quattracs on them? Okay.
Whatever these are.
Non-high performance Quattracs.
Yeah.
I just had
what's available in 225, 55, 16.
It's a weird size. I just had our friend Nick Mercadante of 034 in the e-Golf, and Nick is the drug pusher who gave me that rear sway bar. So I thought it was only appropriate to slide around a corner with him in the car and listen for his giggling when it went neutral and did a 4-wheel drift. And he thought I still had the Michelin Pilot PS4S's on the car. He's like, man, that's a lot of grip from these Michelins. And I'm like, these are like not performance-y Vredestein, just summer. They're summer, right? They're summer, or I'll say whatever they are. They're not high-performance tires, and yet they grip like the dickens. But we'll do a full tire update, and that's a kind of a service piece because I have some negative comments about a Michelin, which I never thought I would say.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's quite the bombshell.
Shit. A Michelin chunked. 4 of them did. Anyway, that's not why we're here today. I felt it appropriate to share with you those images on my laptop machine because today is a random number generator for episode 190, by the way. Which for 189 and next week, for the record, is episode 190. So we will have to have a Mercedes 190 in the background.
Wherever are we going to find one of those?
It's literally parked outside. Huh. And you know this, and you shouldn't lie to me or our audience. Can you look into that camera and apologize? I want a heartfelt apology now.
Right. Give us a number, Jake.
I hereby apologize on behalf of Derek Tam-Scott for lying to you, our esteemed viewers. I'm done. Okay. Now we will pull out. So for those of you who have never heard this before, our random number generator episodes are us randomly generating numbers. Actually, Jake's computer, if we're being specific, randomly generating numbers, which will tell us what cell to go into our spreadsheets of all the cars we've ever driven and read the terrible things we've said about them. Out loud to you. 898. So the first number is 800.
Is that for Jason or for Derek?
It's both of us.
It's up to you, but that is with your maximum, Derek.
Okay.
Derek, what's your maximum number?
It's 13 something.
13 something. I'm at 28. I think, Jake, I lied to you. 2,875 somehow. There are some missing. But okay. 898. You want to go first if you found it?
1999 Mercedes E55 AMG 4MATIC station wagon.
Excuse me. What?
Yes.
No.
There were 15 built.
No.
Yeah. There were 15 4MATIC E55 wagon W210s built.
S210
yes.
wagon.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
That's hot.
Yeah.
Supercharged or naturally aspirated?
No, they were all naturally aspirated. The supercharged one hadn't come out yet. That was with the 211. So
you don't even need to say anything. Forget it. I love it. I want it. Say goodbye to your OTS.
It was great.
Service wagon.
It was reasonably cheap. But yeah, only 15 were made. They were all converted by AMG, I think, not like built Mercedes-wise, but actually converted by AMG based on E430 4MATIC wagons. So 15 of those cars were made. And a friend of mine owned 2 of them simultaneously. And this was when we were in Europe for our rally, and the 190 was sick as usual, and he gave it to us as a parts runner to borrow to go get a brake master cylinder from a junkyard so that it could be installed. Yes, yes, so that it could be installed overnight, so that we could allegedly fix the brakes before the rally, which it did not do. But we did get a new master cylinder from a junkyard, new used master cylinder from a junkyard in Switzerland.
And you also did drive.
And we needed a 4MATIC station wagon in order to pick up the master cylinder.
Of course, one does. That's very cool. I didn't even know that car existed.
Yeah, neither did I. I mean, I had heard noises about it, but
And
it's a E55 wagon with 4-wheel drive. It's now a formula that's very familiar, but this is where it originated. 4-wheel drive 4MATIC E wagons, E63 wagons, but not a 210.
Not a 210.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah, very special car.
For me, that is a 2010 Porsche Panamera Turbo. I put 200 miles on this thing, which is a lot. Oh no. I have a episode coming up where I'm doing some Porsche stuff and I'm wondering if I should read this. Someone said, someone meaning the group of the people who were testing these cars, because this was during a comparison test. I also that same day, same week, drove a 760 Li BMW and S63 AMG. So obviously I was doing some sort of comparison test and I did a combined total of 1,000 miles on them. Someone said the only thing special about the Panamera is its badge, and I kind of agree. Okay.
Whoa. I thought it was supposed to be good.
I was not a fan of that first generation, but let me read what I wrote and I'll tell you what I remember. Okay, its performance is amazing by the numbers, but it's no fun to drive and it's hideous to look at.
Agree.
The best thing about it, the optional stereo. Ooh, I hate it. I want a much better transmission. I want some passion from the engine. I want steering feedback. I want brake feel. I want a more plush interior with more comfortable seats. I want switch gear that I can read while driving. I want different styling, and I want a better ride. This is the 4-door GTR, and as such, it is everything that it shouldn't be.
Ouch.
God, I'm a bitch. I don't remember hating. So what I do remember about the first gen Panamera.
Sorry, this is an S. It's like a 4.5 liter
turbo.
V8. Oh, okay.
It's a turbo. What I do remember about that car is it had a huge amount of bushing compliance up front. There was a suspension would rock back a full inch under braking, and the steering would just go wonky and do weird things. And I talked to a bunch of engineers about it afterwards, and they told me that Porsche had to do that because the front mounting points for the suspension and the structure of the car was so weak that they had to build in all of that bushing compliance, or they would crack the frame in half. And
that doesn't sound like a very German solution to a problem.
And the testing department of one of those cars' competitors then told me after that they would retire their Panameras at I think 10,000 kilometers because they were no longer structurally sound on tests that they would carry out on their cars up to 100,000 or more kilometers. I never liked the way that car drove. I thought it was structurally. It was immediately obvious that it was structurally deficient. And it was so fucking ugly that I have to quote, I probably can't name him. There's a designer whose name is similar to mine, who named it when he worked at Pine Inn Faruna. He named it the Panamerda, which is what it deserves because it was ugly. Sorry if you
And
own a
bad.
Panamera. And bad.
Ugly and bad.
Ugly
This
and
is
bad.
to be clear, the first generation.
Yeah.
Presumably subsequent generations are better.
Okay. Next up, Mr. Jake.
979.
979, which is 10 more than a Porsche. Okay, my 979. Oh, annoying. I have nothing written, but I remember exactly what this was. This was May 11th of 2010. I drove an Audi S4 6-speed manual, 300 miles, together with the same day as I put 435 miles on an Acura TL SH-AWD 6MT.
Sorry, what year is this?
2010.
There was still an S4 wagon available?
No.
In
I'm sorry, did I say wagon?
Did I hear wagon? Maybe I heard wagon.
Maybe I said it by mistake because I was dreaming, but no, they were both sedans. So this was a comparison test together
This
with
is B8.
yes, comparison test
V6.
that I did. No, yes. The supercharged car because they called it 3.0T, and it was supercharged. Comparison test I did for road and track between the TL and the S4, and the TL actually won. We liked kind of everything else about it. That all-wheel drive system was amazing. The shifter was great. Car looked a little bit buck-toothy, but it was actually faster around Beaver Run, which was a racetrack outside of Pittsburgh that's been renamed, than the Audi was. But I couldn't get a full lap out of it without the brakes overheating. So we had to patch the runs together, and it would have been faster. But the weird thing about that whole thing was I had a ZDX, which is that crazy looking Acura there as a support vehicle.
BMW 5 Series GT.
It was actually modeled after the X6. So an accurate version of an X6. But I used the ZDX to dry off the track because the track was wet, and it also has super handling all-wheel drive. And I just did 4-wheel drifts and beat the shit out of the ZDX for a half an hour around the track, and it was fine. But the TL super handling all-wheel drive 6-speed manual like sports sedan immediately roasted its brakes. That was very frustrating.
That's surprising.
Oh well.
979 for me is a 1957 Porsche Speedster with Carrera motor. So I think we have talked about the Carrera motor and its infinite complexity.
Amazing.
It is entirely gear driven, which means that the tolerances and lash and the gear is all, the timing gear is all gear driven, and bevel drives and shafts and stuff like that. No chains or any of that simplified nonsense. Incredible volumetric efficiency, really, really spicy, like cool racing engine that, you know, they're $200,000 because that's what they cost to rebuild.
To be very clear, what Derek just said was that this engine cost $200,000.
The engine is $200,000.
Itself is worth $200,000.
Yeah, maybe more, actually.
And this is a 4-cam,
Four-cylinder
engine.
That's all
pretty nuts.
Gear-driven. Yeah.
And I think there
and
exists
gears.
the total number of people on planet Earth who can time this car is 0.6 or something. It effectively rounds to one person, but it's less than one person who can do this.
Yeah, they're really cool engines. So this car was not originally a Carrera Speedster, but someone had put a Carrera engine in it. It was very cool to get to experience the Carrera engine because a lot of these cars that have Carrera engines, people take them out because they're so expensive and troublesome to live with. But this one had like a pea shooter racing car exhaust that really sounded quite spicy. It was a neat experience. Dual ignition, so when you start it up, it feels like a whole procedure because you have 2 ignition switches. There's a keyhole, and then you have little knobs for each magneto to turn them on, so it feels very airplane-y as you are.
Okay, as
lighting
someone
the
who
thing
has
off.
never experienced one of these engines, is it enough to say like it's so cool in its experience that you'd rather have this than like a 2.7 RS flat
No.
6? Okay.
No. It's just like it is. I mean, whenever I drive them, I don't really rev the piss out of them. Like that's what you're supposed to do to get the power out of them. And I think they're very like impressive volumetric efficiency or specific output. But I'm so scared of them that I never rev them out. So I can't.
You
really,
never rev them out means you rev them how high?
4.
Where do they go to?
I don't know. I mean, if you're making that kind of power, and the racing ones, if they were 2 liters and they would make 100 horsepower per liter, basically. So you'd probably have to be doing at least 7,000 RPM.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I don't. Those engines scare me, and they're expensive enough that I don't rev them out. But with that exhaust, it makes plenty of noise and it feels plenty exciting. It does feel very different from the pushrod engine that a 356 normally has in it.
Which is a Beetle engine, let's be very clear.
It's a glorified Beetle engine with
Is it really glorified, or is it just a more
I mean,
expensive
eventually they started changing materials and putting Webers in them, and they are
Beetle? A different carburetor does not a new engine make.
No, but I mean, like the SCs and stuff would rev reasonably, and they would start sort of like having better materials that were more suited to, that were lighter, basically, that allowed them to rev better. I think that's probably one of the lighter and stronger.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I don't have all that much experience with Porsche flat 4s, but to me, they're just Beetles.
Yeah, I mean the part of the Beetle, we talked about this when we drove that black Beetle for the episode, but the engine feels very similar in the Beetle to the 356, but everything else feels like a Porsche in the 356. And because I've driven a lot of 356s and not that many Beetles, just hearing and interacting with that engine, which is the first thing you do when you get in the Beetle, I'm just like, I'm in a 356, and I start doing things that you would do in the 356, and the Beetle's like, whoa,
no, you don't.
Absolutely not.
You better don't. Yeah.
And so the big difference, the 356 feels like a Porsche in the chassis and steering department, and so it is a Porsche in that sense. The DNA feels familiar, but the engine is certainly not the highlight of a 356.
So now I have to look this up. I have to skip to number 2421 because I spent some time with Rich Griot of Griot's Garage, and he just threw me the keys to his 1958 Intermechanica Porsche 356 Speedster, which was
Intermechanica.
Mm-hmm.
That's not it's a replica.
Well, it's the only 356 I've ever driven.
That's not a 356.
And it had a six cylinder in it.
It's a replica.
And I'm just going to see swaps up with full subframes from a 911 SC, just with carbs. Brilliant throttle response, dirty engine note. Quick, fun, and far more stable than I'd expect a 356 to be. Then again, this isn't a 356, it's a repop. I like it. It's raw and fun and stable at 80 miles an hour and quick enough. Cool car. Okay. So that's the only quote unquote 356 I've ever driven.
So you've never driven a 356?
Apparently not. Huh. Allegedly not, according to you. And in my notes, which says...
I drove a green coupe that had that same swap, the rear subframe from a 911 with the transmission and engine too, and it was really, really great.
This car is fun.
Scary, I would imagine, unless you do the rear suspension from the 911.
Interesting. Okay. Next. 36. Oh, number 36. We're going old school. 36. For me, this was August 17th of 2006. So my third month on the job at Automobile Magazine. I drove a 2006 Volkswagen GTI 2.0T.
Mark V, early Mark V.
Mark V, early, right? I think when we gave it Automobile of the Year, or before we did, I drove it 3 times. I love it. Read full report. What a nice surprise. Balanced chassis, fabulous seats, amazing sounding engine, because there was a sound actor in there, and barely any lag. And then that was a quick 20-mile drive, and then I drove it again a couple times, and then the next time it's official. I'm in love. It's not just marketing BS. This is actually a great car to drive. Speedo is way off, 125 miles an hour, indicated as 114 actual. Got some nasty bottoming out in the middle of a slide, and torque steer could be better controlled. But this thing is a lot of torque, so I can't complain.
Balance, interesting, because that's not a car I find to be balanced.
On the street. So you have a Mark V race car, and it definitely might be one of the top five worst balanced limit handling cars I've ever driven.
Yeah.
In terms of relentless.
It's really frustrating, immensely frustrating. Yeah.
But I think what I probably notice is you lift and turn and it'll tuck in. And then.
Yeah, as long as you're not at the limit of adhesion.
Right.
Yeah. So. For me, 36 was a 1960 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Spider Veloce that was red. There's like 12 Giulietta Spider Veloces here, or Giuliettas of various descriptions here, so I don't remember this one specifically, but I did subsequently own another one of these cars, so that tells you what you need to know about it.
You must have liked it.
I like them. They feel much more modern than they are.
Yeah, I was surprised when we drove yours that other than the brakes, which are drum and unassisted, and I think attached to a different car, because you had to stand the fuck. They worked, but the brake effort was considerable.
And there's a lot of dead travel at the top. The problem with those cars is that when everything heats up, everything expands, and if you set the free play such that the brake pedal is at the top, that by the time that everything's warm, the brakes are dragging, and so you have to leave kind of a lot of free play in those to make them kind of longish until they warm up.
Right? Yeah, it's the big drawback of drums. As discs heat up, they get better, or as they expand, I guess they get a little bit better. Drums get worse until you die.
Yep.
All right. 239. These Excelas. Uh-oh.
2012 BMW M3 Competition Pack Interlagos Blue. I like those cars a lot.
Compact fixed a lot of stuff.
Yeah. That is a car that I think is going to continue to age beautifully. It's also the thing I most remember about that. That's the S65, is it? S65, yeah. The first time I drove it was, if you just go on the basis of auditory cues, then you shift 1,500 RPM before the red line.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you keep checking the tach and be like, more? Really?
More?
Still?
So
it's that beauty of a nice, naturally aspirated, high revving V8. It seemed fast at the time, but now not that much torque. It's just an old fashioned sports car kind of engine, the likes of which we don't see much of anymore. So I think that experience is getting better with time, and nice ones are hard to find because it does the same thing that all M3s do, which is they get cheap and people use them up. And so if you can find a nice one, especially a blue coupe with comp pack.
I never loved the styling of the E92.
Oh, I prefer it as a sedan.
Much preferred as a sedan.
And I think M3s should always be sedans when available, because if you want a two-door car, you get a Porsche.
Oh, yeah. I don't disagree with you.
Right, the beauty of a BMW M3 is that it's practical and useful, and if you remove two doors and make it hard to get in and out of the back seats, then you may as well just have a Porsche instead.
Yeah, that's why the idea of an M3 wagon is just perfection to
Yep,
me.
I agree.
Yeah, no, that E92 was okay out of the box. Became brilliant at when they did the competition package. They fixed a lot of stuff. And that engine, unpopular opinion, though I love and adore the way it sounds, stock or modified, no matter. I've never heard one sound bad. I don't love the torque curve. It is just a perfect plateau of torque for.
You want more of a build.
Yeah, I would love a little bit more of a build. And that is a bad thing for engineering, for speed, whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for area under the curve, then this is a good solution.
Yeah. But
you just want more drama.
I just want a little bit more drama in those cars. Speaking of drama, my number 239 is a 2007 Chevrolet HHR panel van. Cute and kind of useful, but also kind of ridiculous. If there's not going to be a rear seat, why put a fake folded rear seat in its place, which just takes up precious cargo room? And the front doors need to open, and the front doors need to open to get to the rears, which isn't convenient, more of a gimmick than anything else. I think the market would reflect that. I don't think I see too many HHR panel vans.
It's a surprising thing that they actually made.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. All right, Mr. Jake. 15. He's going really old.
Low digits today.
Okay, so this for me is a 2006 Jaguar XJR.
That's the aluminum chassis X350.
Oh, 6, yeah, it would have to be. Great off-idle torque, great handling.
Off-idle torque?
Meaning like just the second
from
you hit the
idle.
gas. Yeah.
I thought you meant as opposed you were pulling out that doesn't have much torque at idle, but otherwise it has plenty of torque.
You turn the air conditioning on, the thing just fucking stalls. It just can't even keep itself running, which would be
I now
appropriate for
understand.
a British thing. Yeah. Torque. Maybe I should. These are my notes. Remember?
Yes. It's an interpretation issue.
Idle torque. Great handling. Coarse ride though, and lots of wind and road noise. Fantastic car to drive, but cheap display in the center console and not refined enough for its segment. Super quiet windows. I love those little fucking observations. It's one of those cars that where like Hondas of the day, or Hondas, I think still to this day, you have the motors really loud.
It's like when you have a car with really loud central locking and it feels like, very vintage
like you're in
American car.
Or a G-Wagon.
Yes.
Has the best sounding locks in the business. Ka-ching.
Yeah. 16 for me is a 1940.
Well, I thought it was 15. Was it 15 or 16?
Sorry.
15. Yeah, don't you dare. Just trying to cheat.
2023 Acura Integra Type S. Blue.
Oh, this is while we were doing the Ultimate Drag Race episode?
Yes. I think I barely drove this thing, but I did take it to the little handling course thing that they have, the open area on the by the paddock at Willow, and it was a car. No. I mean, I have so few modern car references. It was a manual car that was fast and is modern, and that it makes it a very select group of car edge. And I didn't really drive it that much. But,
Okay.
Fair
point. We appreciate your honesty.
582.
582. 582. This is, for me, a 2009 Ford Escape 4-cylinder. A vast improvement over the 2.3 liter, because clearly this was the 2.5, but especially in the transmission. 6 gears instead of 4 make for crazy fast acceleration by comparison, though that's not saying much. Where the last 4-cylinder hit 74 miles an hour in second gear, this one is shifting into third at 49.
Oh, wow. Big difference.
Holy shit. No wonder I said vastly. It also has crazy long fifth gear for quiet, fuel-efficient cruising. The motor is a little loud, and the interior is not nearly as nice as the upper-level models. Only 5,900 RPM from a 16-valve 4-cylinder? Strange. So apparently it was a 5,900 RPM monster that did...
Is that the motor that everybody does, is the hot swap for NC Miatas? You swap the bottom end of that? You want a 2.5 in?
2.5.
I think that
I would assume that's the same engine at that point, 2009, yeah. Oh, it makes sense. 2.5 liter Miata. I mean, but I suspect you'd want it to rev past 5,900.
Well, that's why you got to do the bottom end, but not the top.
Yeah. Oh, whatever. Piston speed be damned.
Yeah. Is it stroked?
I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I knew, but I don't. I could probably look
I
it
don't
up,
wish
but
that
don't.
I know.
I mean,
I've lost interest as soon as I asked the question.
I will say that same day I also drove an Escape Hybrid and an Escape Limited V6.
Must have
and a
been-
Ford Sequoia.
is Ford
Oh,
Sequoia.
Toyota Sequoia 5.7. Somehow. That was probably the car that I drove to go drive the new Fords. Who knows? 2008, it was a long time ago.
This was 582.
582.
For me, is a 1949 Hudson Super 6 convertible.
And there you have it, the difference between Derek, Tam-Scott, and me.
Hudson's not a particularly expensive car, but it is cool.
It is also not a Ford Escape.
It's not a Ford
Yeah,
Escape.
okay.
That's true. 3 on the tree, which is kind of
As
fun.
opposed to 5 on the
6
computer.
on the floor.
Well, 4, whatever the 4.
6 on
4
the
was
wherever the
previous one,
gearbox is. Yeah, 3 on the tree. This is like a This is like a not a less hot Hornet is basically what it is as a convertible. These things have drum brakes and they have the step down frame. We never talk about Hudsons. Nobody talks about Hudsons anymore. But Hudsons are, I think, super cool cars. They were very innovative at the time. It was sort of one of the small creatures in the big three, aside from the big three, before that consolidation really consolidated completely, which happened in the ensuing 2 decades. But the Hudson, was aerodynamic and innovative. The thing that they did that was probably most noteworthy with those cars, which is the Commodore, which is the lower trim car, and then the Hornet, which was the hot one that then did all the NASCAR stuff. That is where Doc Hudson was modeled after, was the step-down floor. Basically, normally with a separate frame car, you put the floorboards on top of the chassis. Here, you would step down around and put the floorboards even with the bottom of the frame, so that you would sort of make the car be lower. And these cars really had that sort of factory-built looking chopped roof look that was popular with Mercs, 49 Mercs and all that stuff in the early days of hot rodding. So these cars were pretty thoughtful, independent, forward-thinking, individualist cars until they failed to adapt because GM just kind of pulverized everybody with money by changing everything every year, and the small manufacturers couldn't do that, and so consumers wouldn't stick with them because they didn't change as quickly as GM and any of the big three products. Anyway, they're cool cars. I would love to own a Hudson someday.
Wasn't previously on my shopping list. Now could be.
I mean, it doesn't drive that good. It's an American car from the 40s, but it's a cool experience.
It's cool
and it's
look,
like
too.
this non-cross-flow inline 6 with a single carburetor. That it's just this unique vintage American car experience. It's pretty fun. Not because it is good.
You heard it here first. All right. 843. We're still in the low numbers. 843. Oh, 2010 Jaguar XFR supercharged 5-liter.
That's a Range Rover engine.
That is the Range Rover engine in an XF.
Did you say 843?
843. I didn't, but Jake did. Oh, come on. This thing is unnecessarily fast. And that's a problem. Why? It's brilliant dynamically, so much so that I love it even though I know it'll break any second. Comfortable ride, great stereo, and a fabulous car to drive. And it's a pussycat on the track. It's even gentle in its transition to power oversteer. What a great car. Shame about the repairs it'll need. I'm going to give you a little asterisk there. Oh, and that touchscreen, I'd hit it with a baseball bat if I had to deal with it every day. Hey, Jaguar, we don't need more power. How about updating that pile of vacuum tubes? Okay, so clearly I did not like the touchscreen because it was if I remember correctly, it was just low res and very, very slow to respond. The reason this would make sense, this is in 2009.
This is after you recommended a whole bunch of XFs to everybody you knew, and then they all got stuck on the side of the road.
3 of my neighbors bought XFs at my recommendation, and they all repeatedly broke down. And my favorite part of the story was the one direct next door neighbor who was the most enthusiastic about his XF and broke down by far the most out of anyone. Then finally filed lemon law. They refused the lemon law. I called Jaguar Corporate. I tried to help. It was a screaming match. He's a lawyer. He was filing suit against them. It was turning very bad very quickly. And they gave him a Land Rover to drive home from the dealership in, and it fucking stranded him on the way home. And so he left it on the side of the road with the keys in it and Uber taxied at the time over to, oh my God.
Acura?
Infinity, I think it was. I think it was an Infinity and bought an FX. And I was rip shit. I was so mad. And after that incident, Jaguar sat me down in England on a press drive of the Project 7, I think it was, next to the head of quality control because they knew I was going to tear him to shreds. And the best part is everyone at the table had broken down in one of the cars. It was like there was a guy who lived in New York who...
So they purposely put him...
They put everyone... They brought this guy and then brought, without telling us, PR people are amazing at, like pulling shit like this. Everyone at the table had a litany of problems, and this dumb... to use the bleep that please, but he's British, so I'm allowed to call him that. And just they use the C word, like "Hi mom, don't be a today." Mom, not mom. He was like, no, these cars are incredibly reliable.
Look at all these metrics we've been tracking.
Yes, exactly. We've gone to great measure to it. This reliability thing is just unearned, and it's just not our fault, and it's just relics of an old day and whatever. And we just fucking. I mean, the guy was in tears. Like he was sweating and then eventually started to well up with tears. And we're like, good, now go yourself, you piece of shit. Anyway, not that I was angry or what I would ever call him a C word as an American.
843 for me, 2011, March 16th, 1971 Mercedes 280 SE 3.5 Cabriolet dark green.
Ooh.
I don't actually remember this one.
You mean you didn't have to call anyone a C word over that car?
No, I don't really remember this specific 3.5 cab.
I know someone with a dark green cab whose parents bought it new. He is now got to be 80-something years old. Lives here in San Francisco. His parents bought a dark green cab and a sedan the same year.
3.5?
Both. I think they were both 3.5s. No, maybe the sedan was the 6-cylinder and whatever it was.
Those cars, I mean, every time you see the price of one transacting, you're like, that's insane. How is this $375,000? Especially because if it were a sedan, it would be 375 cents.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like a great one could be 50 grand and 6.3s. I would rather have a 6.3 than a 3.5 cab. But I think the reason why 3.5 cabs are so expensive, they were very expensive when they were new. They didn't sell that many of them. And it's one of very few options where if you are like, I want a vintage car that seats 4 and is a convertible, the only other choice you have is a Rolls-Royce Corniche.
Which wouldn't drive the way that Mercedes
if you want a European car. So there's very few other cars that do what it does, and they're beautifully made. It's just that I would much rather have it as a coupe, and they were available from the factory with 4-speed manuals, rare, or a 6.3 if you wanted to look at a 108, 109, or the two-door version, which is the 111.
I mean, I would swap a 6.3 liter and a
people have done
manual into the convertible and floor it once. It'll crack itself in half. It'll be amazing.
I like the coupe because it's pillarless coupe with sunroof. That's the way to have that form factor to me.
Okay.
Big number, so one for each of you. 2339.
2339 for me.
And 103.
103?
Oh, 2339. This will be back in 2019. I drove a 2019 Mazda 3 all-wheel drive sedan. Infuriating nav system, just dumb. Awful infotainment, usability through and through. Great imaging from the stereo, but weak bass. No mid-range at all. Vocals are lost. Incredibly quiet on the road and feels expensive in NVH and ride. Cool wipers with magic vision control. That's the Mercedes name of the wipers that would spray on the leading edge, from the wiper, on the leading edge of the rubber in both directions. I don't think the Mazda did both directions. But instead of having a sprayer that sprayed everywhere.
Right, so your vision was obscured very briefly instead of for the entire duration between when you start spraying and when the wiper reaches.
And it would also it wouldn't spray, alcohol-based cleaner all over your paint and waste all this stuff. It uses a much smaller amount of fluid. I like that. Stereo is not as good in as in the hatchback. Backseat on both cars are seriously compromised. Feels a class smaller than the Golf, much less the Jynah, which is even bigger. That's the only real flaw in this wonderful little car to drive. Not a huge amount of grip from the all seasons, but it works well with what it has. Understeer on quick corner entry belies the G vectoring torque control they're so busy talking about, which I barely was able to feel in the snow. So G vectoring torque control is Mazda's chassis control system that will start to drag brake on the inside front. So as you're entering a corner, it'll sort of like help you bleed steer off and I guess reduce understeer. I've never quite noticed the difference in the dry. But
103 is 2003 Aston Martin Vanquish, British Racing Green. Do you remember when the Vanquish concept, when it was called the Vantage in 97 or 98, it came out as a concept, and it was like this incredibly stark departure from what Aston Martin had been doing. It was really like earth-shattering, at least for my psyche at the time when I was 10 or whatever. But then they put it in production as the Vanquish, and it's like the transitional car between the DB7, which is like an XJS basically, and what is that platform called? VQ?
VH.
What?
Not VH. VH, vertical horizontal.
VH, yeah. The new first truly modern Aston, which was the DB9, and then that became the V8 Vantage, and then they repackaged it for a little bit too long and made a bunch of other cars that were based on it. But this was the transitional car, and it was regrettably available only with a single clutch, and although you could do a factory 6-speed retrofit, which I think is probably make the car quite good. So, in light of what the DB9 and DBS became, the Vanquish doesn't make too much sense because the interior wasn't gorgeous like it was in those later cars. It still feels a little bit cheap, and there's some recognizable Ford and Jaguar stuff. But it was a 12-cylinder car right after the V12 Vantage came out, V12 DB7 Vantage. Came out. So that was like a really hot car at the time, and now they're like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 still. And I think a large part of that's transmission. If they came with manuals, they'd probably be worth twice as much as they are now. But yeah, kind of a bummer of a transmission, and the interior is nowhere near as nice as the DB9 when they really made the interiors beautiful and have did so for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's the car that made the DB9 possible, so we'll take it.
Works for me. Another
367 and 103.
23.
You just gave me 103.
Yeah, 2367.
707.
2367. Sorry for the delay. Oh my God. I wrote an entire book on this one, and here's why. So this was a 2019 Genesis G70 all-wheel drive. I have a whole paragraph on this. So this was notes that I took on a job for another manufacturer, where occasionally car manufacturers will bring me out and help me or ask me to help their engineers understand what we as journalists are looking for in cars, and by extension of that is what the consumers are going to notice. And so it's a sort of independent third-party view of their work. And so in this case, this was for steering and chassis controls. This was at the time when electric power steering was really starting had fully proliferated through a lot of these cars, and it was bad times for a lot of car companies. I don't even know what to start out with, because this was my actual report. But backseat looks considerably smaller. Some body roll. Let me say blah blah blah. I'm going to pass on this because it's so. Well, brakes feel like shit. Far more road texture comes to the steering wheel. I feel like the steering is more precise on the straightforward than the BMW. There's a BMW there, but this is suspension as a case of the jitters. Yeah, this is just really, really nerdy, granular stuff about steering feel, brake feel, everything to do with chassis, and not what you'd think of as a review. So
707 for me was 1974 Lancia Stratos HF Green. This is the first one I ever drove. This was the car that had the spicy motor in it, and I was driving it in the mountains above Monaco and in Monaco itself. It was like that car won the Monte Carlo Rally repeatedly. It was like the best place to drive a Stratos, and for the first time ever, and with a hot motor. It was just one of the greatest drives of my life, for sure. And that was the first time I'd ever driven one of those cars. It really blew my mind. So it just, the aliveness of the car and the fact that it doesn't feel like it's under control, but that you somehow don't die, was probably my overarching sort of strongest memory associated with that car.
You loved that so much that I think you set my expectation level really, really high for that.
The green one was more spicy than the blue one. It was
blue
more
one that
race
we-
car. It had a little more race car in it than the blue one.
And the blue one's great, but I think my expectation level was this is going to reset my expectation for anything moving forward, and it didn't. I mean, it was great, but it didn't make me, sell a kidney to buy one. My 707 is a 2008 Ford Expedition, and I was talking about how well it shifted after a 20-degree Fahrenheit start, which means that I was cold. This was December 18th, 2008. It meant that I was cold. I started it, put it in gear, and floored it to get heat as quickly as possible. I'm like, wow, it actually shifted really nice. So we don't have to go into that. All right. Maybe one or two more?
One more twofer.
One more twofer. Okay.
1,778.
1778.
558.
1778. This is strange. This is unusual. I put 520 miles on a 2000 BMW Z3 2.3i. This was not a test vehicle. This is
2.3i.
which was not
this
really
is the facelift.
2.3. It was a 2.5 that was detuned. So there's a facelift. Beautiful, beautiful car, bought new by a friend of mine in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then gradually made its way out here to California, Kentucky, and then sold from him to another one of my friends, and I did a bunch of work on it in between them. There is really nothing sporty about this car, and that's exactly what I would say about an EZ3. Great engine notes and
Even
gorgeous.
the M Coupe?
The M cars are better, but it's just not a sport. I mean, the problem is if you've ever driven a 986 or any Porsche, there's just no contest between Z3 and a Porsche. Like an M Coupe or even an M Roadster. I mean, that motor is spicy, especially when they got to S54s. Not that I like the way it sounded better, is better than the S52s. But you're sitting on the back axle, which to me is always a awkward thing to
It's a little
judge.
distressing.
And the car just feels heavy, right? And it was heavier than like 500 pounds heavier than like a Boxster of the time. But it was just felt like an E36, E46 sort of sedan shrunken down into a Roadster or coupe body, which meant it was a good car. And it was nice, but none of these E3s lived up none of their driving experience lived up to its looks, which is admittedly a very high bar because that car I thought was great looking.
It promises a certain experience, certainly aesthetically.
Yeah, and I say great engine note and gorgeous looks, but it doesn't drive the part. Fabulous ride quality, and this car steady state oversteers. I remember that. It's a rolling work of art, not a sports car. It's comfortable, has decent enough steering, brakes, and such, but communicating with this engine is like talking through an interpreter. Sometimes the throttle responds, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes revs drop on an upshift, sometimes they don't. It's impossible to be smooth. Shifter feels nice at least, and the clutch take-up could not possibly assist smoothness more. Too bad about the engine computer, meaning the rev hang and whatever. Buckets of silky smooth torque and pulls hard to redline, but definitely feels artificially held back, which of course it is, because this was a detuned 2.5 that they called a 2.3. I'd like to try this with a chip to fix the throttle response and piss off the engine a bit more. I do remember that this was their early drive-by-wire, which this was in 2000. I remember like early E46s suffered, 2.3, same thing, and 2.8s suffered from the same problem, which was that there was a delay built in and a non-linearity to their e-gas. So,
I am 2015 Ford F350 Super Duty Diesel Black. That's a good one for me.
okay.
This was a company truck at the first job that I had after college, and we used it for towing a lot, but I always drove it without anything behind it. And one of the things I most remember was, as the way that Jason would describe it, is I was at risk of knocking myself out cold from my tits jiggling from driving that thing on the 405 because it rode so firmly when you weren't towing anything, because it was a heavy duty, it was an F350. So I remember that, and then we used it as we were on a video shoot, and we were on our way to Tehachapi, California from the Bakersfield area, which requires driving up a sort of fairly steep ascending 2-lane highway, Route 58, and you probably the Tehachapi is at 4,000 feet, and you probably start at below 500 feet. So it's a big, fast, sweeping, climbing road that's really fun in a fast car. But I was driving the F350 with like a video crew who had not been with me before, and at some point I was making my way up the hill, and someone was like, "Do you drive on track much?" And I was like, "Yes, I have done so." But anyway, I guess I was cutting a line to try and make the best possible progress uphill in the F350. But yeah, I mean, these are the things that have like 900 something foot-pounds of torque. I had that's one of my very great guilty pleasure automotive experiences is big diesel trucks with a lot of torque. I love
how big diesels smooth out under boost. So they're kind of
clattery and coarse.
And then once they hit that 40-pound boost, it's like they just take off and they smooth out and they sound happiest when they're closest
boosting,
to exploding.
working hard.
What number was that?
558.
558. I'm just going to look just in case there's something ridiculous. 558 was a Nismo 370Z on track. Okay, then we'll do last one more.
1,179.
1179. Here we are in. Ooh, this was ridiculous. This was on April 8th, 2011. So just about 14 years ago. I drove a 2012 Mercedes CLS 63 AMG Fashion Force car.
Oh, what?
So this was a stupid article that I did. I don't remember. I don't know if we ever published it. If I remember, I will have the photos and everything else. I don't remember if it ever made it in. But what I did was, let me think about this. CLS, this was the second gen CLS that came out. And I wound up together with a guy named Huey, if I remember correctly, who was the designer of the new CLS. And so we had an opportunity to spend a day with him. And I thought, oh, this is fun. Let's go. Oh, this is what it was. Okay. Fashion Force was Mercedes put Fashion Force logos on this car and turned it into a police car and used it at the New York Fashion Week. And they had it there. And I don't remember what the hell they did with it. And somehow we talked them into giving me this car. And what the idea was, I was going to pull people over who had done bad modifications to their car and give them a ticket. And then have Huey, I think that's God, I hope that's his name. This is that long ago, I don't remember. Give them a ticket and explain to them what they've done wrong. And it's like, chrome like wheels on your whatever else.
Yeah. And that content never made it out. I feel like that's ahead of its time. I feel like that would be very widely consumed and enjoyed now.
I got to look, and I can't believe I don't remember this, but something tells me we didn't publish it for some reason. Possibly because we pissed everyone off. But either way, EPAS, electric power steering, and the best steering of any Mercedes ever, with the possible exception of the CLK 63 AMG Black Series. Nice usable backseat. Hard to tell. Oh, because it was wrapped, but much more organic styling than other recent Mercedes-Benzes. I still like the last one better, but I love the way this drives.
Yeah, the first CLS is very handsome.
Actually, you know that I just drove one recently, a 55 supercharged, and that was just great to drive and handsome. The 20-inch wheels can clump over big bumps. 7-speed automatic has a few moments with clunks. Auto stop works well, but I would prefer it on cars with a quieter exhaust. That's right, the early auto start stop. So you come to a light and then stupidly, brutally fast. Sounds every bit as impressive as the old 6.2, but runs out of revs 800 RPM sooner. So this would have been the 4-liter, either the 5.5 or the 4-liter.
Probably 5.5.
I don't know what this. Turnos are so well integrated and the car is so fast that I don't care. I don't know what. Oh, turbos. Still, the turbos are so well integrated in this car is so fast that I don't care. Love most of the electronics too. Don't like that the nav is blocked when moving, but voice recognition works well. I spent 9 hours and 39 minutes in the car to do 236 miles and got 15.3 miles per gallon overall. Huh.
Mine is, you're going to love this, 2008 Porsche Turbo Cabriolet Tiptronic. This is just like they've chosen the most expensive thing, but not because they knew anything about cars or were driving enthusiasts at all. It was just like some geriatric car, and where they're like, I'm gonna buy a Porsche because it's more sporty instead of buying the Mercedes SL or the Lexus SC or the Aston. It's just if you buy this Porsche, you're the worst kind of Porsche owner.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. I found the photos. There's the Mercedes right there. We'll do some inserts
Passion Force
on there. Yeah, I did find the photos.
Yeah,
of it,
the first gen was more attractive.
and I do outtakes. Oh my God, Fashion Force violation stuff. There'll be some good stuff in here, but I do remember, and I'm sure I will find these photos. There was there it is. There was a pink Mini with the license plate Mr. Diva.
And a bedazzled license plate frame. Where are you, Florida or LA?
LA. We did, it did have lights that went on. So yeah, I did put lights on.
They're yellow though.
They're
required by law to not be red or blue because you're impersonating law enforcement.
And if I remember correctly, I did give the Mr. Diva guy, a ticket.
Yeah, justifiably so.
Oh, come on. If you're going
the rhinestone license plate frame.
But hold on. What you haven't seen
Bedazzled.
yet as I go through this is the
the pink Hello Kitty seat covers.
Yeah, there it goes.
What an outrageous affront.
Yeah. I wonder, I probably wrote the art. I mean, I will have it. Wrote it and it was so offensive that our editor-in-chief was probably like, that's not happening. We're not doing that. But anyway, fun times. Oh, yeah, I definitely did. I gave a ticket to that Hamann modified G-Wagon.
That's awful.
From hell. Yeah.
Yeah, LA is the place to do that.
Well, this was the whole idea, was that, as a designer, it would have to be really difficult. I went to the original Carson Coffee that time. I love how I have all this stuff
Irvine, and I see a 116.
Where?
On the left side.
I love the whole premise started like, as a designer, imagine you put all of this effort into making a car beautiful and then somebody ruins it, right?
Some people are unserious, right? There's a lid for every trash can.
I love that expression. But there are also, I understand that, but it's got to be difficult to have that happen to your baby. I mean, imagine, we don't know the fights that they go through, right? But you know how it's like to get a fucking email written in a company. Everyone's got an opinion, and imagine what these guys go through. And I've been
seeing
in cars
their creative vision perverted by a committee.
In cars with designers who see their cars on the road and they're like, oh, all they see is what
the compromises
that they had made that they didn't like, and so the idea there is like, you come up with this great looking car. Or you fight tooth and nail. I want these wheels. It has to have this wheels, or whatever they've gone through, whatever hell they've gone through, only to have somebody ruin it. Mm-hmm. I thought that was going to be difficult. And in talking with Huey about this, if I remember correctly, he wasn't all that. Like, he's like, no, it's just part of the thing.
Yeah, and to see it out in the wild is gratifying enough, and that people care enough and see the car as a canvas in some sense to express themselves and their poor taste or whatever.
Well, on that bombshell of absolute disapproval from Derek Tam-Scott, we'll wrap it up.
Okay. We'll join us for the next episode of the Carmudgeon Show, number 190, to celebrate the 201. What are we going to do for 201?
Same car.
Okay.
Duh.
All right. See you later.
Ciao.